Hello, everyone. My name is John Straub. I live in Virgins, and I appreciate that you are here watching us give our budget presentation, our informational meeting for the annual meeting that will occur on February 28th of 2022 at 6 p.m. And again, the next day on March 1st, the town meeting votes. I'm here with our other school board members, Mark Koenig. Could you say hello, Mark?
Hello, all.
I'm here also with the superintendent of schools, Sheila Sewell.
Hi, everyone.
I'm also here is Elizabeth Jennings.
Hello, everybody.
Good. And also board member Chris Cahart.
Hello.
And also here with us is another board member, Christina Macklin.
Hello, everybody.
Great. So everyone, what you're going to see here is a recording that we're going to be able to post so that you can see it prior to town meeting. It'll also be shared at the informational meeting. What you're going to see here is the results of many months of work by the school board. We have had at least 4 budget presentations in front of the entire school board. We sought feedback in the community about budget priorities, and our finance committee, who takes a deep dive into the budget, has looked at this at least 3 different times. So there's a lot of work that's gone into pulling this together. This budget presentation, what it's going to be able to do is to share with you the priorities of the district and to be able to lay out for you some of the reasons why you'll be seeing the things that you see on the annual meeting warnings. We will be able to share with you a little bit more information about all of the warned items. But before we get to those warned items, the superintendent of schools, Sheila Sewell, and Elizabeth Jennings are going to talk with us a little bit about the accomplishments of the district for the year, and to lay out a little bit about what we're seeing in the budget for from this last year and for the future years. So Sheila, I'm going to turn it over to you, please.
Okay, hi, everyone. Sheila Sewell, Superintendent of Addison Northwest. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I'm going to start by talking about our accomplishments for 21-22. As we enter our now 3rd year of being impacted by COVID, this year we were able to return all students to full-time in-person instruction. We are no longer in a hybrid situation. We're not doing remote instruction. We have all students in the building 5 days a week. It's still challenging, but we are finding that our students are very happy to be back with their peers in the schools and learning. So that is the most positive outcome that we've had so far this year. We developed and implemented a COVID recovery plan, which targeted some specific strategies to help improve teaching and learning for our students having returned from being impacted by COVID. Along with that came funding from the federal government that we were able to use for additional intervention and support staff. And we hired a recovery coordinator to assist in the administrative aspects of all of those improved systems and supports. We have also increased our opportunities for student voice and representation through whole school dialogue and groups at the middle and high school level. And we have engaged with our community remotely with a middle level presentation panel earlier in the fall. And most recently, we were able to do an event called Mental Health Matters, where we partnered with many community members to talk about student mental health and all of the resources and supports we have available to us in the community. Next up, I want to talk about our budget objectives for 23 as we began to work with the board to prioritize our spending. We knew that we wanted to continue to be able to preserve all of our equitable student learning opportunities as we looked forward to the next school year. And then we wanted to be strategic about the use of extra surplus funds that we had with spending being reduced during COVID. So we strategically planned for those through our facility stewardship plan, and also by returning additional surplus funds to the taxpayers, which you'll hear more about in the budget portion of the presentation. Lastly, just the highlights of our budget. We continue to support financially the professional development for our faculty and staff through our spending plans. We have expanded preschool education and childcare offerings. This was something that we heard from our community last year through our community engagement, that parents needed access to full-time preschool and childcare offerings for our youngest learners. So we're able to add preschool and childcare for full day, 5 days a week next year. We were able to maintain all of our current educational programs for students. So we did not need to reduce any programs going into the next school year. And we added staff to make sure to achieve our class sizes that we've identified through our policy. And again, we've added staff to help support the increase in social emotional learning needs of our students in the wake of COVID-19. So we have added a few staff members at each school for this purpose.
Hello, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Jennings. I'm the Director of Finance and Operations for Addison Northwest. This slide is showing what the FY23 final proposed budget is. And it's in the second to last column. That is the actual proposed budget. So it's $22,327,585. And you can see that the column that shows that there's the difference between that budget and the current fiscal year, FY22, is about $723,000 overall. It's relatively uniform where the increases are. The higher amounts of increases are in the areas of student support services and in direct student instruction services. Student support services are things like speech language pathology, psychological services, intervention services. So it's pretty obvious with COVID and all why there is a focus in that area. The only area we saw some decreases in is business, tech, and wellness. We were just able to find some efficiencies in those areas and be able to reduce costs. And so basically this is the same format that we use to show our board every month. And it's consolidated and summarized in the same manner that they get to see the financial information on a regular basis. And so we thought that would be helpful for anyone else to be able to see. It also gives a different, more summarized version of what we publish in our annual book. And so hopefully this makes sense for everybody and gives you a clear picture of where the district plans to be spending their money for fiscal year 23. Next slide. Now this is the chart at the top of this slide is our budget history. We use this same chart in our annual reports. Basically, it helps us compare fiscal year to fiscal year, what our local expenditures are, what our local revenues are, what our equalized spending is for education, our equalized pupil numbers. That's how many weighted students we have in our district over time. Our education spending by pupil number. And so this year, our proposed budget for FY23, you can see that the expenditure budget is exactly the same as the previous slide. It shows how much local revenue we typically have and compares to previous years. You can also see that we have an increase in our expenditure budget this year of 3.35% over the current year. And our local revenues have also increased substantially. We have 8.32% increase. Our local education spending has only gone up 2.39%. And at the same time, our number of equalized weighted pupils has gone down by 3.34%. And the total per pupil spending for the district for this proposed budget is $20,311, which is 5.92% higher than fiscal year 22. I think it's imperative to kind of look at what the increases are and the decreases, and then compare that to how much our pupils are dropping. That's a very important factor when we talk about our budget. It shows me that we've worked really hard to try to keep costs down and keep those budgets low, because despite the fact that we're losing a number of pupils in our counts, we're still having nominal increases in our expenditure budgets. The graphs below this little chart show the historical budgets from before the school district merged from a school supervisory union into a school district. You can see that the trajectory of the increases from FY11 all the way through fiscal year 18. And then the second graph starts with fiscal year 18. And these are just expenditure budget totals. And you can see the trajectory from FY18 through the current fiscal year. This slide is about our anticipated revenue. This just gives everyone an idea of what kind of revenue the district receives. We have miscellaneous local revenues. Typically, those are things like interest. They might be rental of facilities. It also includes things like high school completion and small things like indirect grant revenue that the district receives for administering all of their grants. They have transportation. That revenue is received based on how much the district spends in transportation costs. And there is a formula from the state of Vermont that gives us reimbursement for our regular transportation, but also our vocational transportation to the Career Center. We have special education revenue this year that has changed quite substantially. The funding formula is changing for Act 173. So you can see that dollar figure is different than maybe it was in the past. It includes a block grant and then some reimbursement for extraordinary cost students, as well as any state place students that we have in the district. We have early education revenue. That is another form of a block grant that is received specifically for early education from the state of Vermont. Miscellaneous other, those are small, more unexpected types of revenues. Driver's education reimbursement is an example of some of the revenues that go into that category. We have a prior year surplus. That is the dollar amount that we are putting back against the budget from the surplus dollars this year. It's $337,763. And that is from the surplus from fiscal year 21. And then we have education funding, which makes up the vast majority of our revenue. And that is not only money directly from the state of Vermont for the education fund, it's the property taxes that we receive. That's all considered education funding for the school district. This slide is a calculation sheet that we typically publish also in our annual book. It tells us, it starts with the expenditure budget, it backs out local revenues, it shows that surplus that we are applying to this budget again. And that's how you come up with what your balance is that you need to fund with the education spending, which is again, your property taxes and the education fund money that the state sends to the district. You've got the equalized pupil number. And when you divide that education spending by that equalized pupil number, that's how you're coming up with your equalized spending per pupil. The projected threshold is set typically by the legislature and the state of Vermont. That is currently $19,977. We receive a certain amount of credits towards our per pupil spending because we have debt service, loans and bonds that we're paying off. And on top of that, those extraordinary cost students also give us a little bit of a credit towards our equalized spending. And that holds us below the penalty threshold. This year, the threshold is in hiatus, meaning we still use it for our calculations, but even if we were above it and we didn't have enough credits to keep us below it, we would not receive a penalty this year. We still keep that in our calculation though, because we want to make sure that we're ongoing trying to stay below that and not receiving that penalty in the future. those debt credits in this scenario are plenty to cover the small amount of $334 that we are slightly over the threshold they set this year. The forecasted homestead tax yield is $12,937. That is also set by the legislature and the state of Vermont. That number is quite likely to change or fluctuate even after we publish our book. It's likely that if it does change, it may go higher, which actually would reduce our union tax rate if that was the case. And that is something that happens. It did happen last year. Assuming that all this remains the same, we would have an education equalized union tax rate of 1.57. And we have no consolidation incentive revenues left. This was last year at fiscal year 22 was the last year that we received an incentive. It declined 2 cents each year until it was no longer there. That was since the consolidation of the supervisory union to a district. So we will have that union tax rate of 1.57 still. And when we compare that to the current fiscal year's actual tax rate is 1.6744. So that is indicating a decrease of 10.44 cents in the tax rate with this proposed budget. Now here's a chart that shows what the common level of appraisal is and how it applies to that union tax rate that we were just talking about. So in FY22, the CLAs were relatively low for all towns in our district, but they were hovering in the 90s and some of them were close to 100%. The more close to 100% you are, that seems to be kind of like where your mark is. You're trying to get as close but not go above in that CLA. And for fiscal year 23, you can see these numbers substantially dropped. You've got Addison dropping to 93.89, Ferrisburg to 94.93, Canton to 95.18, Virgins drops to 86.97, and Waltham drops to 93.84. Now what that does is when you apply it to your tax rate that we're proposing, it calculates what your individual town education tax rate will be. And so we have those estimated here for FY23, and you can see they hover anywhere from 1.6539 in Ferrisburg as high as Virgins being 1.8052, and Panton is a little bit lower at 1.6495. And then we do a comparison to try to see what would these tax rates mean if you had a $300,000 home and you were applying these tax rates to them. So the dollar figures out to the right of the chart basically show you what in fiscal year 22 versus this proposed budget fiscal year 23 tax rate would do on a $300,000 home. You can see that they all decrease in varying amounts for each and every town. And this is our budget recap. Basically, we have a comparison that we take from fiscal year 17 all the way through the current proposed budget. And we're trying to see what are the percentages that our budgets are increasing overall. What is the percentage that our tax rates are increasing overall when you look at the range of these years. And you can see basically that our per pupil spending is up by 5.92%. The union tax rate is actually decreasing by 7.34%. And when you take into factor that is including the Act 46 incentives that we had in the past. And then we have our budget, which increased 3.35% overall. That's just the expenditure budget. And then again, showing that our equalized pupil counts are down by 3.34%.
Thank you so much for that information about our budget. There's a lot there. Thank you all for listening so far. There's going to be some time and Christina is going to tell us a little bit more about how you can ask some questions and how we're available up until our informational meeting. But right now, it's we want to make sure that you take a look and see our warned items that will be on the ballot this year. There's quite a few, and so we're going to move through them as quickly as we can. I'm going to start with the first 6 is going to be read and explained by Mark Koenig. So Mark, why don't you take it away?
Thanks, John. I'm Mark Koenig. I'm a board member, lives in Virgins. The first 6 articles are issues that we would typically do from the floor if we were meeting in person, but because of COVID, and because of the state's authorization that we can do this virtually, these 6 articles, like last year, will be on the ballot. So Article 1 is to elect a moderator for the term of 1 year. Our current moderator, David Tatlock, has agreed to run again, so his name is on the ballot, but write-in people are also available. Article 2, to elect a clerk for the term of 1 year. Again, our current clerk, Martha Kenfield, is listed on the ballot, but write-ins are welcome. Article 3, to elect treasurer for the term of 1 year. The current treasurer, Greg Burdick, has agreed to run again. Article 4, shall the voters of the Addison Northwest School District vote to authorize stipends to be paid district officers, including the directors, $850 for each member, $1,275 for the board chair, $150 for the clerk, $4,500 for the treasurer. Article 5, shall the voters of the Addison Northwest School District vote to authorize the board of directors under 16 VSA 5629 to borrow money by issuance of bonds or notes not in excess of anticipated revenue for the school year. It is necessary to borrow because of the time lag between receipt of taxes and beginning of a new budget. And Article 6, shall the voters of the Addison Northwest School District vote to authorize the board of directors to electronically distribute the annual report.
Thank you, Mark. It's my turn to read Article 7, which is the article for the budget. It reads, shall the voters of the Addison Northwest School District approve the Board of School Directors to expend $22,327,585, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. It is estimated that this proposed budget, if approved, will result in projected education spending of $20,311 per equalized pupil. This projected spending per equalized pupil is 5.92% higher than the spending for the current year. So we just heard a lot of information about the budget, and I'll just say, well, we can certainly talk more about it at the annual meeting. We're glad to take questions on that. But the short story about this budget that I'd like to convey to you is that this budget maintains every single one of our educational programs for our children, and it makes some necessary investments, especially those to meet the emerging student needs that we have, as most in large part as a result of the pandemic. Secondly, this budget actually will result, we expect, in tax reductions for every single municipality in the district. And we expect that this budget, although an increase in the per pupil spending, is likely to see about a 10-cent union tax rate deduction. Just as a little context, that budget decrease is about 20 cents. The union tax rate we expect after this year will have it decreased by about 20 cents over the last 2 years. So there's some investments that are made, as well as what we believe are some fiscal responsibility. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Chris Cahart, to talk about Article 8.
Hello, I'm Vice Chair Chris Cahart from Ferrisburg. I am here to introduce Article 8, which is shall the voters of the Addison Northwest School District authorize the assignment of $1.5 million pursuant to the provisions of 24 VSA 2804 from the fiscal year 2021 balance fund to the ANWSD capital improvement funds established by the electorate on March 7th, 2017. This is, I'll just speak a little bit about this. We have overwhelming support on the board for this article to help us support the board's strategic plan for the upkeep and improvement of our current facilities. Thank you.
Christina, over to you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Christina Macklin from Ferrisburg, and I'm going to talk to you about where you can find all this information that we've been talking about tonight. So first of all, our remote informational hearing is going to be on Monday, February 28th, starting at 6 o'clock to review everything about the budget and what's on the ballot, the Australian ballot, and where you can vote and when. You can join us by Zoom. You can join us by Zoom on your phone. There's a certain passcode for that. And also we will be streaming on Facebook Live. If for some reason you're unable to use the chat room when you're watching or joining us on the 28th, feel free to email questions to our board chair ahead of time, and we can hopefully address your questions that way. It's if you're unable to send us your questions remotely on the day of. You can, oh, there we go. The annual report is available on our website, ANWSD.org. You can call the office to get a copy sent to you at 802-870-8903. I should have put my glasses on. I almost read that wrong. And then you can also email our administrative executive Lori Martin at gmartin@anwsd.org if you would like a copy mailed to you in the mail. I think I need to tell you where to vote now and the day of the vote. Oh, I also want to mention anything related to our budget, all the documents that we've reviewed for the last probably 6 months at least, or throughout the year, are posted on our website. There's a tab for the budget on the homepage when you go to visit it, and you can look at any of the documents that we have reviewed in preparation for presenting this budget to all of you. You can, the voting date is on March 1st, Tuesday, and in the town of Addison, voting is from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. In Ferrisburg, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Panton, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Virgins, 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. And Waltham is 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. So sorry for all that, but they're a little different in each town. And absentee ballots are available right now. So if you can't vote in person, you can get your absentee ballot sent to you. And thank you for joining us, and please vote. We appreciate your support.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you to everyone who just presented our information about our budget and upcoming warned items. Thank you, Christina, for telling us exactly where we can go and learn more about this. I just want to say one thing to you, to anyone who's been here to listen to this so far. Thank you so much to you and to community members for your support of education in this community. It matters a great deal. The ANWSD's vision statement is, we envision a kind, collaborative, and creative community for all that nurtures a diverse and accessible learning environment. Students will flourish as critical thinkers and productive citizens, cultivating resilience in an ever-changing world. Our district is doing a good job of helping to educate all of our students. We're grateful for the work of the district and we thank you for your support. If you have any questions and you're at the informational meeting, we'll be there to talk with you then. If not, please reach out to us to ask questions and to learn more. Thank you very much.